Let's kick off this morning with Kieran Gallagher, Managing Director of Vitol Bahrain. And Kieran, if we might just start with ultimately the news of the day, or one of the pieces of the news of the day, and how heat, extreme heat, is impacting or could impact refinery operations across the world, particularly in Europe. Your thoughts on that being a factor for the markets, both on the supply side, of course, refinery supply products, but also on the demand side, if indeed we need to be burning extra fuel oil. But let's deal with the impact on refineries first.
Yes, good morning, Sean. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, you're 100% correct, Sean. I would say it's perhaps the European refining sector that tends to suffer the most in extreme heat. Obviously, they're not built for temperatures in mid-30s, mid to high 30s. So we did see it. There's been a couple of fairly recent experiences over the last couple of years where we've seen a drop off in runs, units performing poorly. Particularly last year, there was weather was attributed to some outages in both the Med and ARA. I think largely, I would say though that the refining sector has been performing pretty admirably this year. So if there are some small scale outages because of weather and where runs drop 2-3%, it won't be the end of the world. We are seeing extreme heat in the Middle East at the moment, and yes, you can point to it's July in the Gulf. What do you expect? But it's actually been a very early summer. You'll have experienced it obviously with where you're currently standing. The government here in Bahrain have issued warnings for this weekend where the real fuel will be above 50 degrees, and that's extreme for Bahrain, to be honest. And we have obviously seen blackouts in Egypt, in Iraq, even some in Kuwait, just due to the extreme pull on the power gen sector because of the early summer and real extreme early summer conditions that we even experienced in June. So not in answer to your question, I would say not unusual to get some outages. Certainly a tick up in demand for air conditioning reasons, particularly in this part of the world, and we're seeing a real pull on the electricity sector because of it. But yeah, if we're to see another heat wave in Europe, much like last year, I would expect a couple of runs to come off a couple of percentage points.
One of the big factors, although Paul did reference that, supply is sort of as steady as she goes and predictable to a great extent. But Kieran, we have the big decision by OPEC Plus to increase supply come October 1st, which of course is just around the corner from a planning point of view, with OPEC due to meet next, OPEC Plus, I should say, on August 1st when everybody is at the beach. Are the conditions lining up with to sort of cater for their proceeding with these increases in supply? Your thoughts on the context of OPEC increasing supply into the fourth quarter, Kieran, and the conditions stacking up now to support that?
Yeah, I think we would need to see a tick up in product demand really to drive that. It's only a month or so ago we saw some real margin compressions, refinery margin compressions. And concerns over product demand growth. As Gaurav has just said, there has been a tick up in jet demand, but there's probably a little bit of room to go on jet, particularly in the long haul sector, because as we see it, it's probably jet demand's probably only 1% above 2019 levels at the moment, around 7.5 million barrels per day. So I think it would need to be product led, Sean. The refineries calling for this. In recent weeks there has been a little bit of a squeeze on crude availability, and we've seen a recovery in margins. But looking forward, I think is it 2.2 million barrels that OPEC Plus are hoping to bring back onto the market gradually from October onwards. We can't really forget the non-OPEC supply as well, and that's been growing healthily. And I think over the course of this year, probably we're going to see a growth in supply in 2024 of about 1.5 million barrels, half of that from the US. So there's barrels on the market competing with that OPEC Plus supply. So I think we would need to see a real pickup in product demand to be able to house that extra supply of crude coming to market.
Kieran, I wanted to get everybody to give us a sense of while the holiday season kicks in, the silly season, and people get distracted and liquidity tends to reduce. What will you be watching for the markets over this period, and how could the liquidity impact the direction of travel?
Yeah, I think, interestingly, I think managed money flows are currently, towards the 2-year highs in the market at the moment. So as you say, it is, this next 6-week period is traditionally a time where liquidity drops, holidays, and perhaps a lack of action, maybe beyond hurricane season in August. But it is interesting that we have seen that influx of managed money to the market, and there's some, you could say that there's some evidence that is keeping the price elevated towards that $85 at the moment, because as Gaurav rightly said, and Paul, that the risk premium isn't what it used to be, or the geopolitical risk premium isn't what it used to be. So I think we will be keeping an eye on that, keeping an eye on demand, really. And as you say, there's an OPEC meeting on August 1st. Obviously, the eyes of the world will be on that for any big announcements. Probably don't think there's going to be anything huge to come out of that. And so, I think that's the main focus at the moment. And
it sounds like you're saying this is not a period to go away to the beach short this market. If you're going, you gotta stay long.
Well, not necessarily. I think it was interesting that there was such a large hurricane so early in the season, as you discussed earlier this week on the podcast. And with that was obviously going into a long weekend, but as near as you can get to a 4-day weekend in the US, and therefore it did attract some managed money flows. It doesn't look like there's a huge amount of tail risk in terms of refineries coming back in the US Gulf, or crude production coming back. So I guess we would be interested to see does a little bit of that flow come back out of the market over the next week or so. But I'm not sure. As you say, the war goes on. There's still friction in the Middle East. We are going into hurricane season. Is it safer to be long? Yeah, you could argue so, but $85 is not a low number.